to us. We are just so grateful that you are here. Welcome to another excellent episode of Big Bear Theory. However, as you can see, if you're watching on YouTube, I am alone once again. So Tanner is, in all frankness, is probably going to be back sometime in June. So he is working pretty much on getting all the pools staffed, everything put out, all the procedures written out. And so he's very, very busy right now. My schedule is a little bit more routine right now. So you'll be stuck with me probably for another couple more episodes, and then hopefully we can bring Tanner back and he can say hi to you guys and everything. But very grateful that you are here. The last episode did fairly well. Got a lot of good feedback from everybody. So I was a little bit nervous doing a solo, and it looks like it worked out okay. So thank you all for giving me the feedback and letting me know how the episode was. Really appreciate that you guys enjoyed it. Means a lot to me. And, hopefully that helps you out in the training world, whatever you're doing, trying to help people. We are still looking for, or I guess I am still looking for some recommendations. So if you have any recommendations on what to call my solo list here on Big Bear Theory, feel free to let me know. So far we've gotten Parker's Pep Talks and Parker and Peeps. So just, you and I talking together, or listening together, I guess would be a better way of saying it. So if you have any other names for it, feel free, and we'll, comment on this video. I'll make a little segment just for this video, but comment on this video. Let me know what a solo, but me to you guys, what you think that'd be a good title for, and we can go from there. So not fully voted on it, but as of right now, again, we have Parker's Pep Talks and Parker and Peeps. So if you like those, like down below, give a comment down below. If you think of something else, give a comment down below, and then we'll vote on it and we'll see what we did. But that'll be our next playlist, or our new playlist, our little solos that we got going on with you and myself. So now was the idea of what do I talk about next, right? Because training was really easy. Obviously, I talked for almost 2 hours on it, but now what do I talk about without Tanner? And I think I just kind of have to accept that I have to stand on the higher podium and help us by, maybe we'll talk about this now, and then we'll talk about it with Tanner a little bit later down the road. So what I want to talk about was actually something I got inspired with over a couple things. One is for my wonderful sister, Abby. She graduates college this May, very soon. So this episode is particularly for her, or kind of dedicated to her, as she has gone through all of high school, all of college, and is now taking on big person world. And it is also where we'll start this story and dedication is for the training that I was at this last weekend. And so trying to paint the picture here, we are doing spinal backboarding. Our lifeguards are doing spinal backboarding. I'm helping out with the class. And this tiny human, tiny person, is maybe 100 pounds soaking wet. And she is the secondary. So what I mean by that is we've gotten them in the water, we've gotten the person on the backboard. And now this tiny person has to hold the arms up, over the ears, and has to kind of hold this victim on the backboard while the person is in the water, strapping the victim to the backboard so that they don't slip off or fall off. The whole goal is to maintain stabilization of the entire spine. The straps help with that. And this is a very, very hard skill because we are doing it in deep water. We're not doing it in shallow water. So in shallow water, this is pretty easy. Strap on, you're done. But in deep water, you have to tread water by yourself. You have to kind of see where these straps are going. It's a little bit harder to find them. I think in this particular instance, the straps had gotten twisted, so they weren't laying the way that they should have. And this, like I said, just little human, great character. I'm not bashing on short people. I'm short myself. But, I remember looking at their hands, and their hands, I don't have fairly big hands, but I think if they went palm to palm to me, it would look something like that, where they were I could have easily wrapped my fingers over their hands. And so they're holding on to the victim, fake victim, not real, it's just another person, but they're holding on to them, and the primary is trying to deal with the straps because they got twisted, right? And the person, secondary is really trying to hold on. You can tell she's putting a lot of effort into it. We're motivating. It got me on one side saying, you got this, don't worry about it. You got the other instructor on the other side motivating her as well. And she starts to cry, but she doesn't let go. But as she's crying and holding on and just putting all of her effort into it. And I was like, hey, we're doing great. We're almost done. We're there, right? Trying to keep the motivation level up. We finally get the straps on. She's still crying. She's putting the arms down because now we have to put the head immobilizers on. And so there's hair in the way, and you can't really have the Velcro and hair don't mix. If you try to put Velcro on hair, it makes it less sticky. So you have to swipe the hair out of the way so that it sticks directly to the Velcro. And so that was becoming a problem. And I think at one point the head immobilizers, because of the hair, they didn't quite stick on. So even though they were put on, we had to kind of take them off and re-put them back on. Now, keep in mind, this is the first time they've done the save. So our lifeguards that are trained and pass a course can do this a lot faster. But the first time you do this, obviously, is a little bit harder. But crying through and gets the strap on. So now the fake victim, is 100% secured, and now they have to slide the backboard out of the water and onto the ground. So this involves lifting. I mean, basically kind of doing a deadlift, backpedaling type maneuver, I guess you could say. And so she's lifting, and we have to make sure they can do it by themselves, right? So I'm on one side of the board, the other instructor's on the other side of the board, and we're kind of holding the backboard to just make sure that they don't drop it, but we can't really help pull. And so she's pulling with all her might and pulling, just trying to make it happen. And finally gets the victim out, sets them down without dropping the backboard. And she just kind of collapses down and continues to cry and things like that. And it was such a beautiful, beautiful fight to see. And the instructor was all empty, that's what fighting is. That's what we're talking about. And that's what I want to see when we're fighting for this save. And I couldn't have asked for a bigger fighter in that. Someone who comes up to less than my shoulder, again, hands, I could easily crawl around. I don't even have big hands. And they gave 100% into it. And, so the instructor walks up to her crying and saying, hey, we're good. What's wrong? And she said that it was so much pressure trying to do all these things. And the instructor was like, hey, don't worry about it. Come over here. And we kind of, separated them from the main group, right, to talk it out. And I don't actually know what was said, but I could assume something along the lines, knowing who this instructor is, was talking about, yes, there is pressure when it comes to these saves. I mean, our goal is to save lives. That means it could be a spinal victim who, if we don't do this right, is paralyzed. That means if we're not on top of our game and we don't get people out, that they could die. And so, yes, there is pressure, but the instructor managed to find a great way to explain that even with that pressure, as long as we push ourselves and try and never give up, then we will be successful. And so what was funny, they talked for about 5 or so minutes, and, I went out. There's other parts of the training going on, so I wanted to make sure that was going well. And I come back, and they had just finished talking, and I remember it said, take a quick little drink of water and take a deep breath, and then come back when you're ready. And what was really, really great about the end of this moment was, the guard, the secondary, took a little drink of water, took a big deep breath. You could see her stretching and everything, trying to get ready to get back to doing those saves. And she comes back with this huge like fire inside of her, and all of a sudden everything clicks. She's walking the guards through how to do these saves. She's saying the mindset. She's telling everybody how to push. I mean, this person who went from probably one of the quietest people I've met and to really just one of the most rambunctious people, full on passionate about all of these skills and all these saves. And it was such a wild change of event. And I really was trying to, and I need to ask the instructor what they said, because they really ignited a huge fire in that person. I mean, they were just a whole new person. And this really, again, this is where the inspiration comes from, is this story is, I'm going to call it the fight, maybe the fight of life or whatever you want to call it. But as you grow older, it really pretty much out of high school, I feel like high school, graduation of high school, starting at college was the big turning point. I think is really the big turning point for a lot of people. And I usually always say, and it's kind of a common phrase that's used, is, college either makes or break you. Right. And I feel like it's because it's such a pivotal point in time where you go from the whole world structured in front of you. I mean, think about it. You're forced to go to high school. You have classes right after the next, right after the next, right after the next. You have your sports right after that. And then there's some free time, homework time, whatever. But it's very rinse and repeat all the way up to high school, because you have people holding you accountable. Who are those people? Your parents, right? Your family. They're the ones holding you accountable to these things. But when you get to college, you don't have that. And what kind of took me for surprise was the amount of free time. And I use free time in quotes. If you guys remember the very first episode that Tanner and I did, like intro/college, in case you want to look it up, I ended up basically failing my first semester because I thought I had all this free time, and I literally just took an exuberant amount of naps. I'm talking at least 2 to 4 hours every single day. I mean, there might be some days where I didn't nap, but I'm saying in a week, I probably took 3 to 4 naps in a week every single time. So I took all these naps thinking I had all this free time. I ended up playing rugby for UTSA and started doing that. Did some working out because obviously I wanted to work out. And it was just like, man, this is so much like easier. And then all of a sudden, I think it was either right as fall break or something like that hit. And it was like midterms, big group projects, and then finals pretty much after that, all within like a 4-week time span. And now all of a sudden, all this free time that I had, I realized I no longer did, because now I'm playing a massive catch up to get to remotely to passing. And I did terribly, like absolutely just threw it into the gutter. And there were some other issues that I had going on, nothing drastic, but essentially, for those who don't know, right, I went military route. I did the reserves, and there's a big difference. So a little kind of eye-opening moment for you guys. If you guys are using the military to pay for college, you really want to make sure you're paying for that college, you need to do the active duty side. Don't do the reserve side, because I did the reserve side. I'm going to tell you how much money I got per month on that in just a second, but that is not going to pay really for anything. I'm going to be like very blatantly honest. If you want to really capitalize and get 60, 70, 80% of your tuition completely paid for, you need to go active duty for at least 4 years. 4 to 6 years is kind of that marking. And if you do that, then yes, you will absolutely, especially in Texas, you have the Hazelwood Act and the GI Bill. And so that's 2 different sources of income essentially coming to pay for your tuition. So active duty in regards to that sense is the best way to pay for college. If you're just trying, so that's where I didn't know, fine print, right? So I end up, going through the VA, right, to get all the bills paid for. And it took me a little bit, it took me like a month. And we had kind of paid for a lot of it semi upfront, because we were going to get the money back, right? Because it was going to be 100% paid for. And so got like the fanciest meal plan, got all the books, got everything, got the whole works. And I finally get all the paperwork processed to get money into my account to essentially start paying for all of this. And the first, I guess you could call it a paycheck. I don't really know what to call it, but the first money thing that I got was $360 and something cents. So I go to the VA at the college, the VA center, I guess. And I'm sorry, I don't really know what any of these things are called. Like I just did what I needed to do and moved on. So, but excuse me. But so I went to the VA center in college, and I was like, hey, I only got $360. Is this like just because of how late I was and like the rest is coming? And he was like, no, that's right. And I was like, what do you mean that's right? And he goes, well, like that's the accurate amount that you're supposed to get. And then he starts to explain, everything's based off percentage of active duty hours, essentially, that I get this money. And so because I have pretty much no active duty hours because I was reservist, I didn't qualify for more than $360 a month. And that was it. Now, I did not enlist in Texas. I enlisted in Tennessee. So I was not maybe there was probably a way to squeeze it around. But as far as I know, there is no way for me to get Hazelwood Act. The Hazelwood Act, as long as you enlist in Texas, again, a separate entity from the GI Bill, you might get more compensation for that. But I didn't have that because I enlisted in Tennessee. So, $360 a month. And my first semester in college was close to $10,000, $12,000. So that was pretty stressful because then I had to go tell my parents, who had already spent a lot of money just to get me like initially in, that basically Marines aren't going to pay for my college the way that we intended. And this was, I think, fully kind of understood around November, end of October, November. And this obviously created some tension with me and my family because I was just ready to drop out for that semester, go to community college and kind of work my way back. But, I was already so far ahead. My parents were like, we'll pay for it. Right. So they paid for it. But again, there's tension arose. While apologetic, wasn't the most grateful, at least verbally grateful for what they did and how much they paid. And that caused more tension and pretty much led to me not coming back home to Dallas. And I ended up moving up to Austin instead. Right. So nothing's wrong other than like I had a big ego and, I couldn't let that go. It was like a time where I was trying to figure out my ego and things like that. And so I ended up just moving to Austin and started pretty much life from scratch. So I was grateful. I had my car, but that was about it. And then I had $123 in between my checkings and my savings account, and that was it. And so my negotiation, as I tried to figure out where to live, was to my reserve unit was in Austin, was to talk to the people that lived in Austin to say, hey, can I live with you, but can I live rent free? And actually, can you pay for my groceries? Because I don't have a job and I don't have enough money to like pay for them. And surprisingly enough, someone was able to do that and get me some sustainable living until I could get a job, which I got a job very quickly. I got it in like 10 days. And I was able to kind of start paying for what I needed. And I was going full on independent. So, technically my phone bill was still being paid for. My car insurance was still being paid for and things like that. But I was really trying to go full blown independent. So when I got enough money for a phone, I got a phone. And when I got enough money to pay for insurance, I paid for my own car insurance. Right. And so I started doing all these things and slowly working my way to the top, which got very agonizing. I had to take like a year off school to even get remotely financially stable from what I've done to myself. And life moves on and I progress, and here we are, right? I don't need to give you my full story. My job is to really kind of introduce where everything happened and how I kind of learned things the harder way, because that's what life is. And so this is, I guess that's a very long introduction with a very empowering story to my side, my story, to kind of express how quickly things can change, because I was a great student. I mean, I graduated high school with like a 3.9 GPA. I was very athletic. There were definitely scholarships that I could have like, found and done to like minimize my cost of living for school. And I just didn't do those things. And now all of a sudden my intelligence doesn't matter, because my first semester I got like a 2.3 GPA, which is not great, especially for me. And, no amount of athleticism was going to help me pay the bills. And so I really had to figure out all these things. So that's where I want to start. Is life is going to kind of throw you these battles. Again, life is a fight. And there's so many ways that life can throw a battle at you, if not multiple battles at the same time. And often what I have found is it's always something completely random, and it's never really what you expect it to be. It's not so much, oh, I need to find a job. Oh, I need to find a career. Now I need to find a significant other. And I mean, and those things are hard within itself, right? Learning how to, work, learning how to love another person, and, learning how to just be sustainable on your own. Those have its own battles, but it's really more than that, because I'm over here, I'm in college and unable to pay some bills. And then next thing I know, like I have nothing. But there were other cases where I was able to pay bills. I was structurally sound. And then all of a sudden my radiator decides to blow up, and now I'm out $800 that I couldn't really afford to lose. And here we are. So sometimes there's going to be these mini battles like, wasn't expecting that to break. Now I got to pay for that. Or, I think at one point I ended up having to pay 2 rents at one time. Wasn't expecting that. Wasn't also expecting to fail college and kind of start from scratch, right? But there's going to be these battles pretty much all the time. And it can be anything from couldn't pay for this, could be I took actions that led me down a terrible path. It could be a tragedy that has happened to us or someone that we know that impacts us. It could be us being gracious or us being compassionate people and sacrificing ourselves for the betterment of others, right? There's always going to be this battle that's going to, I wouldn't say control our lives, but have a significant impact on our lives. And we have to take control of that in order to actually move past that barrier. And what I love from the story of the lifeguard crying and holding on and maintaining the stabilization, feeling that pressure and still pushing through, is something that I haven't seen in quite a while, because we live in this kind of cancellation culture mentality, right? And it used to be a few years ago very immediate that when I was done, I was done. And that was it. Like, I'm done. I can boom, canceled. I'm moving on to the next thing. And for the first time, seeing true struggle to the break of tears, to full on crying in front of a bunch of people, this wonderful human being managed to work with someone to recollect themselves and then overcome that pressure, and then be ignited by the fuel from that lesson to where it no longer bothered them. And now they're inspiring others that are still trying to fight those obstacles. And I think that's so powerful in one story, that you can see all of these things. You see the battle, you see the impact it has on you, and then you decide in that moment if it's too much or too little, and whether you take it on or not. And then you see the real outcome of it down the road. And this is kind of the difficulties that we're trying to figure out. And what I don't want to degrade by any means as I say this, and so please don't take me wrong on this, but mental health is a very publicized thing that needs, keep in mind, it needs to be publicized. It needs to be spread. It needs to be shown. In no way do I ever want to degrade mental health and in the issues that can come if you don't understand that you're mentally being affected in a negative way by certain things. Okay. So I don't want to degrade these things. It is very important that everyone understands. And at the end, I will try to kind of explain when is it too much and when do we need to keep pushing on to the best of my ability. Right. But I do want to encourage a little bit of uncomfortability. Like just, you should always be uncomfortable. And that can either come from the life's battles that you're facing, but at some point, what's going to happen is those life's battles become easy, right? And you're going to be able to start overcoming those over and over again. For me, my life battle was literally figuring out how to like pay bills or even like, car insurance, like I said, phone insurance, or not phone insurance, phone bills, and how to like actually find these things. What is, insurance, like what is the deductible? It took me forever to figure out what a deductible was, what made sense, why it raised insurance, why it lowered insurance, those types of deals. All the commercials that say this is the best insurance in the world, for me was like the worst insurance in the world. I kid you not. There was one insurance that I found. I was like, oh yeah, because they always say it's cheapest insurance alive, blah, blah, blah. It was like $400 a month for me. And then I used like a premium. It was like Allstate or something like that, maybe Progressive. And it was $150 or $200 a month. So half the cost. And from the commercials, I was like, that doesn't make any sense. But had I just gone with what I thought I knew, then that would have been an issue because I would have just been blatantly spending an extra $200 instead of doing real research to figure out and understand these things. So sometimes the battles require that research and finding those resources. Sometimes it requires endurance. Sometimes it requires using resources that are not just readily available to you, like the inner web, but people, right? Or ways for you to kind of counter these things. But the comfortability as things get easier to you, right? I mean, paying bills for me now, it's like whatever, auto pay everything. So I never have to forget. I never have to do a late fee. I never have to worry about call collections or anything along those lines. That is done. And now I have different, more difficult things that I have to do to start learning how to essentially master it so that I can figure out those things. And what I'm trying to say with, and maybe I'm just kind of all over the place, so let me try to bring this back, is you only learn when things are uncomfortable. You do not learn when things are easy. And we kind of explained this a little bit in my last episode, just me, right? The world's greatest instructor trainer. At some point, things are going to get so easy that it's very natural to you. And we described the ability to walk and how difficult it was to actually teach that. And over time, what happens is as things get easier, so does the ability to enact bad habits. And what I mean by that, and I can use the walking thing as a great example, is even though I've been walking my entire life, I've enacted some bad habits where, so I overpronate, which means like my heel strikes, the inside of my foot rubs down onto the ground and I hit my toes and then I go. And then you have neutral, which is like perfect, not quite perfect, but let's say perfect heel to toe. And then you have supinate, which is I hit my heel, I kind of roll onto the outside of my foot and then off my toes. And in reality, neutral is the pronation level, the stride that you want it in order to not worry about joint pain. So even though I've been walking for, which is sad, like 30 years, I'm 31, which is, and I'm starting to see age now, like in my face, and I'm like, ugh, but it's fine. I've accepted it. I'm becoming wiser. Right here are my wise words to you guys. But I overpronate now, and over time, if I don't like learn how to correct it or find ways to improve my stride, then I'm going to suffer pain down the road from that, right? So my bad habit is the fact that I overpronate. So as things become easier for us, so is the ability to generate bad habits. And this is where we go back another episode, the fundamentals. You constantly have to refresh yourself on the fundamentals to make sure that you still have a good foundation to base your advanced game on so that you can still be extra successful down the road. So we don't necessarily focus on those fundamentals once we feel like we've mastered that, and therefore bad habits will come. So it's very important that if we feel content with our life right now, if we feel that we are living the dream, I guess, essentially, and full on saying living a dream, you know, I'm not worried about bills. I'm not worried about my significant other. I'm not worried about my life. I'm not worried about, you know, what I'm doing. And I just feel this general contentness. This is the danger zone that you need to very much get out of, because more and more bad habits are going to form. All of a sudden, I feel comfortable paying bills. Cool. I'm spending a little bit extra money that I shouldn't because I feel comfortable paying bills. All of a sudden, you know, I feel like I have a significant other that I love. Maybe I feel too comfortable and I stopped going on dates. You know, I stopped giving compliments. I stopped doing the chores. I start taking them for granted. These are all things that are very possible as we get content. You know, I feel like am good with my job. Then I start doing basic work, average work. I don't try to improve my work. I don't try to do anything more significant other than that. Next thing I know, people are getting promoted over me. Next thing I know, more and more people are setting the standard. And now what I thought was my good standard is now below, and everybody else's standard is here, way up, nice and high. Even though I haven't changed my work and, you know, this level standard was accepted, it's never going to stay that way. And these are the bad habits that can accumulate over time as we find ease within our life. And so what I recommend is, if you find yourself in this level of like contentness, to find something that creates that uncomfortability, add something new to the routine, you know, try something new in this, you know, whatever, different hobby, language, art, whatever it may be, but never be content with where you are. When you are content, you're in a very dangerous zone of no longer advancing yourself, whether it's your life, your significant other, or your spiritual beliefs, like anything along those lines. Maybe all three, or all three and above. You may, if you don't do that, then you're going to degrade and devolve, even when you're trying to evolve, or even though you felt like you've evolved to this level already. So actually, that perfect transition to kind of like my next point and my next topic as I go into that, which is that concept. Your best now is not your best later. And this is let me say that again. Your best now isn't your best later. Because what it took you to get to where you are now, someone is always trying to essentially be better than you, or the good old fashioned saying, there's always someone faster, stronger, better than you are. And so even at your best, there's always someone that can do better. At the same time, your best now, while may take a lot of effort, will eventually be easy. And I'm going to go very, very simple here. At one point, adding was a little challenging for us, right? First grade, second grade, I don't remember when I learned addition, whatever. But 7 plus 8, oof, like, honestly, sometimes I still can't remember what 7 plus 8 is. And it's 15, whatever. I got to show off a little bit. But, you know, the 7 plus 8, you know, that was hard. And then it wasn't so hard. And then we did times tables, right? And I don't know what you all did back in your time or whatever, but what I had to do is we had to do speed multiplication and what I'll never forget, a little side tangent, but it hurts my heart. So our reward was, 1 through 12. We had to know the multiplication of 1 through 12. And if you could pass like a series of cards, I think it was all 12, right? And so it'd be like, it would be 1 times and then all the numbers. So 1 times 1, 1 times 2, 1 times 3, 1 times 4. And then it would be 2. So 2 times 1, 2 times 2, 2 times 3, 2 times 4, all the way to 12, right? And so you would do this. So 0 was a bowl, right? You get the bowl, easy freebie. And then 1 was like the ice cream, because we're building sundaes. I don't know if I mentioned that. I apologize. Short-term memory loss. But, and then each after that was pretty much like a topping or a different flavor of ice cream or whatever it may be. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And my favorite, like candy to this day, are Reese's. And Reese's Pieces was a topping, but it was 9s. And 9s, for some reason, were like the hardest thing for me to do multiplication wise. And so I could never get the 9s well enough to get my Reese's Pieces. So when we finally got to make our sundae, I had no Reese's Pieces. But now that is not hard for me to figure out, right? I can figure out the 9s, but it was extremely hard for me back then. And then we learned big multiplication, with 327 times 36. We learned how to do all those things. That was hard once upon a time. Then we go into algebra, and then that was its own language. Why are there words in math? It makes no sense. But then that became easy. And then we do calculus, and now there's even more words and less numbers. And the problems are 2 pages front and back and one thing makes it all wrong. And what's even crazy is that when I took Calculus 1, while granted I didn't fail, didn't make a lot of sense to me. I took Calculus 2 and all of a sudden Calculus 1 made sense to me. And this is what I want to portray, is that aspect. At one point in life, my best was trying to figure out 9 plus 7 or 8 plus 5 or whatever it was. But now my best was learning that Calculus 1, now granted I could not do it anymore. Don't anyone try to do some calculus problem for me right now. But Calculus 1 became really easy for me, and my best was really trying to figure out Calculus 2. But at no point could you tell me, hey, Parker, 2nd grade Parker, tiny guy, hey, little Parker, at one point you're going to solve problems. One problem is going to be 1 page front and back, and you're going to be able to solve it. So this is what I want you to understand, is it's only through pushing ourselves and doing the best we can in that moment, knowing that maybe we're not hitting 100%, but in that moment, if we give everything we can, well, that would obviously be our best. And while it is not the best compared to other people, and while it is not the best 5 years into the future, that is our best right now. And if we stay there to where that does get easy and we choose not to advance ourselves because we have deemed that I just want to be the best at this point in time and no further, then my best is eventually capped. And it's not even really that it's capped. It's that my best goes from like 100%. It's kind of like depreciation, right? Even if you never drive a car, the moment you drive it off a lot, right? You buy a car, you drive it off the lot, it automatically decreases in price. Kind of the same thing. I give it my all. This is my best. Next year, my best, even though I haven't done anything different, has now gone down 10%. Now there's 10% that I could have filled that I'm not. And then next few years, it goes down another 10%. So now my best is only 80% of what it was initially worth. And so in order to still be at your best 2, 3, 5, 10 years down the road, you have to consistently push and do things that force you to do things at your best. And sometimes that's as simple as trying to figure out what 8 plus 7 is. But the only way to get past what 8 plus 7 is and to learn what 8 times 7 is to pressure yourself and to put yourself in that uncomfortable situation to be able to fight and figure out what 8 times 7 is, what 87 times 75 is, so that you can really, really excel and continue to boost yourself so that your best is always increasing over time. And this is where I think the battle is. A very, very long explanation, probably, but the balance of trying to figure out what is true mental health degrading versus what is mental health stimulation. And I think this is what we need to figure out. And I think this is very different for every single person. And this is what's really, really important to identify, is that if I just did calculus for the next 5 years, it's very possible that I could burn myself out and hurt my mental health in that aspect of things. But at the same time, I could do, and I think I did 2 years of calculus, but before I went kind of to my third and kind of stopped and realized that it wasn't for me. But ideally, you don't want to say that often. I think that's kind of the thing, is don't use this is a difficult part of my life to be the excuse that you should not do it. But at the same time, you need to be cognizant of where your mental health is at and if it's starting to degrade. And I would say one of the key factors to kind of note, and again, I rather kind of talk about this in the end, but I would say one of the key elements is of kind of identifying when your mental health is kind of downgraded is when everything else slowly starts slipping in front of you, even with the stuff that you're good at. You know, if I'm just overly stimulated from calculus, but everything else is going well, but I feel that mental strain, like it almost feels to me, it feels like my brain is literally working out. Like I feel pressure in my head. And that's how I know my brain's being like really, really well used. But if in that moment while I'm doing calculus, that's when I feel it. But then, personal life's still going well, my job's still going well, other classes are still going fine, then by all means, I'm just giving it my best in calculus. And that's just my focus. But my relationships start dying. I start cutting people out. I start not talking to them. My grades start slipping in other classes. My job performance starts decreasing. As multiple things start decreasing, then I know that I'm hitting more into then I know my mental health is truly being affected. Right. And so this is maybe like hopefully a way for you to kind of signify when do I need to really keep pushing versus stopping. And again, I want to hit that later. So little tangent, little foresight there. Ultimately, I think it's very, very important that you just continue to try to be your best, even if your best is not acceptable to you, even if your best is only 8+7 and you can do that well. Because the only way to get better at something is to try with every bone in your body to master it. But if you never try, if you never even attempt, then you're never going to fulfill your full potential. So be okay and be comfortable being uncomfortable. There's a whole brand out there. I think it's called Seek Discomfort. I don't know if that's the brand or whatever, but it's a great brand and concept to undermine is seek comfort in the discomfort. Don't be afraid of the pressure. Don't be afraid that it's uncomfortable. Welcome the uncomfortableness and bring it in. This person is literally crying from the pressure of holding this person up, knowing, even though this is not a real situation, knowing that she's preparing for this once in a lifetime situation and she is bawling her eyes out. Now, granted, I don't think she was necessarily welcoming that, but she also didn't let it deter her from doing what she needed to do to make it happen. And once she overcame that obstacle, she was tremendously different afterwards. Her mentality, her mindset, and everything completely changed. I'm talking 1,000% from the quietest person there to helping people be successful in what she really, really struggled with to the point of tears. And that's the idea that I want to portray, is that if we don't push ourselves to be accepting of this discomfort, if we don't try to overcome it, then we can't teach people, we can't help people, we can't inspire them when they are going through the same thing to overcome them. So now not only am I kind of pulled back and am unable to evolve into being the person that I need to be for me, but now I can't help the next person overcome that obstacle because I was not able to overcome that obstacle myself. And so maybe some incentivization to kind of help with that is, if you don't want to do it for you, maybe do it for the person next to you. Because there have been so many times I've been so grateful that I've kind of gone through these weird and wild things that has allowed me to say, hey, I can tell you right now, if you do this instead of that, you're going to be in huge trouble. But if you do this, you will save yourself a lot of pain and a lot of discomfort. Because ultimately, I feel like that's a lot of like why our existence is what it is. We exist to conquer specific things that allow us to help others through the same situation that may not be able to do that alone, but we were able to do it alone. And we're able to give that advice and give that inspiration and that insight to them so they don't have to handle that alone. I'm here, already experienced that, been there, done that, and now I can help them through that. And now they have less pain and suffering than if I hadn't tried to push that myself. So I like to almost use it as a source of inspiration that if I am going through something terrible, if I am all alone, if I have hit rock bottom, then it's either my duty to find a way to push past that and fight for it tooth and nail, or find someone who's been in the same situation and start trying to figure out like how they did it. And they can see it from hindsight, from perspective, to give me that advice, to give me that insight, to give me that inspiration to minimize my pain and suffering of the same situation. And so we're going to have kind of both instances, right? We're going to have stuff that we just have to figure our shit out all by ourselves. No one's there to help us. No one's there to hold our hands. And then there's going to be cases where we will have to figure a lot of stuff out, but maybe we have a mentor or our friends or family that can help us kind of figure everything out a little bit later on, or during the motion, and decrease that pain and that suffering. And then we can go on, take what we learned from our friends and family, take what we learned to kind of maximize and best ourselves. And then we can pass that on to the next person. And we just keep passing this torch around. But if we retract and decide to stop, then we also have to note and understand that we can neither help ourselves if that instance occurs again, nor can we help others that are facing a similar situation. And this is the question of, when is it enough? And when should I keep pushing? So again, not here to give like the perfect advice here, not saying here's a 5-step solution on how to conquer life or how to conquer mental health or how to advance yourself, right? I can only give you from my own personal experience what has happened to me, what I've learned from my mentors, my family, and my friends, and I can pass on to you. And I hope this helps at least one person. Again, this whole podcast is for one person to listen and take something from it. That's it. So I revert to college to figure out when enough was enough. And I'll revert to something else that I pushed really tremendously through and how that went about. And I'll have kind of like two stories of that because I think I said, when is enough enough? When I have no one but me, and then when I have people to help me through. So I'm going to go back because I want to finish off with enough when enough is enough. Because that to me is honestly a little bit more simpler to explain. And I've already kind of hit that. So figuring out me, right? No one, nothing. So when I was in my like early 20s, maybe 21, 22, that was probably like my low point, my lowest point of life. And I kind of know in hindsight, looking back, it made a lot of sense because I did a lot of stuff to distract me and none of it was really beneficial. I mean, it kind of had its own benefits in its own way, but it was all done for the wrong reasons, right? I wasn't looking for a significant other, but I was constantly dating around. I was working out, but I wasn't working out to better my fitness level or anything. It was purely to distract from what's going on. I did school. Didn't know what I was doing it for. I was just going to school because that's what I thought I needed to do. And that's what I thought needed to happen. And it was in this very much of this point in my life that I just really didn't realize who I was. And I really had no friends. I mean, I don't think I really had, I had like one friend that really kind of helped me get to where I was. But in that time, and I don't even know if I really knew this friend at this point in time where I was just starting to be their friend. So I was pretty much as lone as I could ever feel. And something happened with someone that I was dating. Didn't work out, obviously. It's not a happy part of the story. And that was kind of like my breaking point. And I remember just laying in bed. I couldn't sleep, had like, it was like so many thoughts were buzzed in my head. And I wasn't sure where to go. But I really didn't have anyone to kind of help me through it. And I'm sure there were people that went through it. I'm sure my family, probably could have given me some advice. But to me, I was so alone feeling in that time. I didn't want to reach out to them. I, was angry at myself. I didn't like myself. I didn't like who I was. And I don't know. It was as dark as it could be for me. And it's not like anything like crazy happened. Like I had a car, I had a job, I was going to school, I was able to pay for it. Like nothing really bad was going on. But yet it was still pretty much my darkest moment. And it was because of how confused I was with who I was and who I was trying to be. And I knew the only way to figure that out was to keep pushing through, was to keep just fighting the fight. Do what I knew, what was right at the time to the best of my ability. And this is what I say, like Frozen 2 comes into play, right? Hit rock bottom, I have to do the next right thing. And I just have to hope that kind of pans out. And so that's pretty much what I did. And so for like a year, I just did school. I worked out to work out. I kind of changed my intentions on that. I took a break from dating. I wouldn't say like longer breaks, but I started when I dated, I was dating with intention to find a long-term relationship, those types of deals. And it was just like small adjustments into that. And that didn't make like a huge impact on my life, but it did like start things. And by the time I would think I was like 24, 25, that's when things really started to know, because I ended up really making a huge deter on things, which was no more distractions, no nothing. Everything is done with 100% intention. Everything is done with I'm going to do it because I want to do it because that's who I am. So this is where I really started focusing on myself to figure out who I was as a person. And I was able to kind of do that a little bit while working for Barefoot. As I started getting into his leadership roles, it really forced me to figure out who I was. And because I had to be a leader, and the leader that I thought I needed to be was not actually working. And that was really confusing for me because I grew up military leader. Military leader is do this. And if you don't do it, then you get wrecked. Like it was very simple. Like if you don't do it, I'm going to yell. You don't do it, like there are going to be consequences. And it's very like matter of factly. So when I try to lead outside of that, I mean, it worked. It didn't not work, but it just wasn't, it never felt right. It never sat right with me. And I never was really happy about my performance as a leader within that moment. So while it was effective, I'm not saying it's not, I just wasn't happy with it. And so I started changing things. I started to open my mind to what are other ways to lead and what are other ways to do things. And that's when I learned, the power of appreciation. That's where, I mean, we do follow appreciation. We do that because of like how powerful it is, not because it makes me a better leader or I'm doing it to be a better leader, but because when you show people appreciation, the feeling that they receive is far greater than if you don't. I mean, it's just, there's no contest. Tell people thank you, tell people you love them, tell people appreciate them for everything they do, even the small things as such as taking out the trash can or whatever, and you made their day. And that's where I can introduce Muffin and Motivational Turtle. So for everyone that works in Barefoot, I send this turtle emoji all the time. And I have a tattoo, very terrible. It's probably my worst tattoo of him on my wrist. I'm like breaking my wrist trying to show it, but it's right there. Probably the worst tattoo I've ever gotten. It's done by like a apprentice for like, who had been apprenticing for like a month. This alone of the whole tattoo on my arm inside and on my ribs was probably the most painful, purely because they were just shoving that needle deep inside my like muscle at that point. So, but this is a really good transition of when I started figuring who I was. So Muffin and Motivational Turtle came from, we had just come up with core values in Barefoot. And that was honesty, respect, humility, compassion. And core values is not something we'd done. They had just come out that year. Like 6 years into the company. I had been there for a couple of years, I think 2 or 3. And my boss comes to me and is like, hey, Parker, your people are like terrified of you. And I'm like, why? It made no sense to me, right? Like I'm awesome. But no, they're like, yeah, Parker, they're terrified of you. And I'm like, well, I think I actually even said like, it's not really my problem as long as they do what I need them to do. Right. And so then that progression kind of turns into like, hey, Parker, like we got to work on this. And I think Charles or Blake had kind of talked about the core values that kind of began the opening of my mind that perhaps maybe this does make kind of sense, right? So I start to really take on these core values and like, okay, fine. Honesty, not a big deal. Very honest person. Respect, yes. I learned respect in military. Trust me. Like I will never not respect. Compassion. Well, I didn't really care that people were scared of me. I just wanted them to do the job. So clearly not the most compassionate human being. And I'm going to say humility. Last one. Yeah. Humility. Oh yeah. Ego size of, I still have an ego the size of the fucking world. Oh, but apologies guys. But it's, yeah, you can see that's how big it is. So it just, that conversation, okay, I don't care, to okay, maybe, to hearing the core values. And I think it was really maybe midsummer or something like that. I'm trying to get the full time. And again, I guess it doesn't really matter. But at some point I decided, okay, fine. Like, I really want my people to like me. I really want them to see a different side of me. How do I do that? And so I go and I talk to my boss and it's like, look, honesty, respect, like it's fine. It's not a big deal. I can figure that out. But I don't want my people to be afraid of me anymore. Like I want them to feel comfortable around me. Right. So I asked for advice. How do I work on compassion? How do I work on humility? And he goes, first thing he asked is like, you appreciate your people, right? I was like, yes, like they make my world go round. They do great things for me. And he goes, how often do you tell them? And I was like, I don't know. Like, why do they not know I appreciate them? Like they're awesome people. How do they not get that? And he goes, step 1, tell people you appreciate them. That's it. Tell them thank you. Tell them I appreciate them. I was like, all right, easy enough. 2 was put emojis into your text message. And so I became kind of that old guy. And I wasn't old. I mean, I was like 24 or 25 at the time. So I wasn't super old, but I became like the old guy that like put 7,000 emojis per text message per response, like an over exuberant amount. Now, granted, I did do this intentionally to be kind of a belligerent asshole, but at the same time, I did do a lot of emojis and I can't deny that. So make fun of me as if I'm old or whatever. That's fine, but that's what I did. But almost immediately, I think a week had passed. I was like, hey, whatever, just to see if there's a chance. Or maybe he came up to me. I can't remember. I really can't. This is a long time ago, guys. But I remember him saying, Parker, instant turnaround. Like, everyone is responding differently. Like, I haven't had a complaint since we last talked. And that I know for a fact is true. And so I was like, wow, okay, this works. Tell people I appreciate them. Put some emojis in text message, right? Just feel it out. And so that's what I did. But what happened was I was putting so many emojis and it was kind of exhausting. I was like, okay, I need like to simplify this process here. And so I tried to find a universal emoji that I could use that was just like a kind of symbol of positivity. And what's funny is that it's Muffin and Motivational Turtle. I'll talk about the name in a second. But it was supposed to be a penguin, not a turtle. But the iPhones didn't, all they had was like a penguin head. And I was like, that's not it. It's not it. But the turtle was kind of like near it. I could see the turtle while looking at the penguin. And I was like, that was it. Because it's not this like dinosaur turtle that you see now. It's like it was a cute little turtle, innocent looking turtle thing, like the cutest emoji animal thing could have ever found. So if you want to look up like old turtle emoji iOS, and you'll see this cute little guy, and it makes 100% sense why I chose him. And then he turned into a dinosaur. It's kind of terrifying, but thankfully his brand was established, and so it didn't matter once they changed. Anywho, so I use this turtle, and people are like, why are you saying this turtle? It's like, I don't know, man. It to motivate you, I guess. Like, that was it. Like some love and appreciation, some motivation. There you go. And so I keep sending this turtle. And finally someone's like, do you have like a name for this turtle? Because you keep sending him. Like, I feel like you need a name. And I was like, I don't know. And so like I was with a friend at the time. I was like, hey, they want a name for this turtle. And they're like, Muffin. Like, it's without hesitation, Muffin. And it honestly worked really well because, again, I was using it to motivate. I was using it to kind of lighten up their day and things like that. I was like, Muffin the Motivational Turtle. So that's where it came. He has his own birthday now. Muffin the Motivational Turtle his birthday is May 23rd. It's like International Turtle Day. Random fun fact for you. But the whole point of this conversation, obviously, to bring Muffin into life for you guys to know, send Muffin to anyone. I do want Muffin the Motivational Turtle to be international, wide. Like, someone needs motivation, send them Muffin the Motivational Turtle. Like, let this be a symbol. I have a whole idea for shirts where it's going to be like a frocket. And so it'll have like Muffin kind of like poking his head out, and if you like pull it down, it has like a little motivational quote underneath the pocket that you can read, right? I thought that was a cool idea. And then like something nice on the back. I don't know, it could be like you're beautiful or don't give up or whatever, anything motivational. Just a little quote on the back, a little Muffin hanging out on your pocket, kind of like this peering through, right? I thought it was cool. So yeah, if you want to see those guys, let me know. Feel free to give a like. Make some Muffin and motivational shirts any day. But it really showed me a whole different way of leading, because it was just by being a nice person. It was just by being genuine, showing that appreciation, showing that love and that care, showing that I'm not this robot who is just demanding, but starting to pursue that I am actually more of this, and I really just want the success for others. And so I changed my mentality for the success of myself and what I'm in charge of. to helping them be successful, which ultimately does come back and make me successful. But I just didn't have that point of view on it. And we always talk about, we do a leadership course within Barefoot that talks about the difference between like a leader and a boss, and that key fundamental change and that switch, that change from people just doing what I asked them to do to people wanting to do what I want, ask them to do because they were inspired by the leadership that I had because of how much care and love I had for them. They did that when I started caring for them first, when I started loving them first, when I started showing them appreciation first, when I started to want their success first over my own success. Their success meant more to me than my success did. And I started to not really even find happiness until I knew they were successful. And that's what dramatically changed. And then it like all clicked. And once I figured out that it was never about me, it's for everybody else around me. And I just want the best for everybody else around me. And if I can play even 0.02% benefit to helping them, I was probably like really worded wrong, but 0.02% of my effort, if that helps them, I'm willing to do so. Like nothing's at stake here. The littlest things to help them be successful, I'm going to do it. If I can do the big things, I'll do the big things too. But there's always sacrifice when it comes to compassion. And how much can you sacrifice? I'd love to give $1,000 to everybody in the entire world, but I don't have $1,000 to give to one person. I don't know how I'm supposed to do it for 1 million or 1 billion or all 7.7 billion people out there in the world, right? I can only sacrifice so much, just like my time. I only have 24 hours of my day. Of 8 of those, 6 to 8 hours of those, I am sleeping. So now I only have 16, 18 hours to give and devote to other people. So compassion has its limits. It has its sacrifices, and you can only do so much. But when I realized who I was, and that was to help people and to find, I was inspired by others, and I had this calling to help people any way that I could. That's what opened up everything. And that's how I was able to evolve into the person that I am now. But it took, rock bottom, like terrible decision making, terrible XYZ, so many bad choices were made, so much suffering was involved in that moment. And I could have given up at any point, and I chose not to. But it was only by my own decision, my own will to push through that was I able to be successful. And now I have the ability to help people push through these problems as they experience them, because everyone really experiences this, especially during college. My sister called me all the time her first couple years in college because it was so much stuff. And then slowly those phone calls died out, not because she didn't want to talk to me, she still did, but because she was figuring it out. And then a new problem would call, and she would come and she would call me, and we'd walk through it and we'd talk through it and we'd figure it out. Did she always take my advice? No. Did she do it sometimes? Yes. Did it help when she took my advice? Yes. Did it help when she didn't? Yes. She's a strong, independent woman. She'll figure it out with or without my advice. But she understood the game and how to get the full picture from other people's perspectives and then apply her own experience to that. And that's what helped her to be so successful. Now she graduates, which again is crazy. So probably the best I'm doing this kind of in order, because that's the longest one, right? I had to figure everything out myself. So therefore it took a lot more explaining of where I came, where my epiphany arose, what happened, and all of that. So now we go on a story of when I hit, again, a battle that I'm not sure if I'm going to make it through. And I know my mental health is at stake. Actually, I know for a fact it was even damaged, and how I got through that. And that was I want to say it was either the summer of 2021 or 2022. But for anyone in the lifeguard industry, or really if you're an employer, 2021 and 2022 were the hardest years to get employees, the hardest years to staff. And there are companies really still suffering from this today. But in 2021, 2022, a lot of companies tanked. They couldn't staff. They couldn't do anything. And just on the lifeguarding perspective, there was like a national lifeguard shortage for 2021 and 2022. There are companies out there that there was one company, I don't know how many pools they had, but just to really blow the picture up, let's say they had 100 pools. They were staffing for a week. They would staff like an area per week. So they would staff like 35 pools here and then for a week, and then they would close them for the next week, and they would open up another pool, and they would staff those 35 pools for a week, and they would close those pools. And then the remaining 30 pools, they would staff those for a week, and then they would close. So basically every pool was open for 1 week and closed for 2 weeks. Like that was the solution. We didn't really go that route. We still tried to staff as much as we could, and it took a lot of work. I mean, we had, I don't really know roughly how many pools we had in 2022. I'd say like maybe 60-ish, because I know we cut some in 2021, and 2022 was not much different. But it was go time, and there was a lot of stuff that happened that made it pretty rough and more extra rough, I guess, within that moment. We had a key leader leave. She had to leave, and to me personally, I think she did what she needed to do, but still huge hole that we lost, right, and had to fill, caused a big, massive there. Gabby was pregnant with her little baby boy Xander, cutest looking thing, looks like a Disney character, I swear. It's like the cutest looking baby. And I don't know if I say that because I'm like the unofficial uncle of him, and so I just think he's cute looking guy, but I've never seen a baby look like a Disney character before, and it's just super cute, super funny. But she was pregnant with him, and the year before, it was 2022, because in 2021, having to deal with all that, all those shifts, and we were filling like 30, 35 shifts per day, every single day. I think there was at one point a whole area of 20 pools. The day before Memorial Day weekend, of 20 pools, only 2 of them were staffed, and we lost a supervisor and an area manager. They up and left, and so me and my co-part had to figure out how to staff 20 pools in less than 24 hours, which miraculously we did. But that feeling we experienced every single day in 2021 to get the job done. And in 2022, it didn't show any signs of changing. And when I lost that key leader, all I saw was 2 founders of the company watching their kind of company slip away, something that they took a long time to build. We had a lot of loss of just leaders over time. And in 2021, I wasn't fit. In 2021, like I was actually the director of operations back then. So some fun facts for people that didn't know that. I was director of operations at one point. I failed that job terribly. I couldn't do it. I mean, I would just, it was too much with everything going on top of the job, and it being a huge job. I failed absolutely miserably, did terrible. And 2022, we see the pattern, we see the retention rates low, we see everything happening. And now I just see like, man, like it really almost felt like this could have been the last year had nothing changed. And, I saw Gavin in her situation, saw the owners in their situation. And to me, it was at that point that I had to really step up. And so I don't know, man, like switched over, did everything. It was a grind. I mean, still filling probably 20, 30 holes a day. Like nothing really changed from 21 and 22 other than my mentality. But I mean, I hit my point around like July or something like that. It was something like a fight with, it was probably like not taking out the trash or what, but I just shut down and I was done. And it was the low point that I hit for 3 days. I didn't talk to Casey at all if I didn't talk to really anyone. Like I just worked and I just grinded and didn't talk to my family, nothing. And it got so bad that Casey like reached out to Gabby to say like something's not right, right? And I'm just doing this just to get through, and I'll figure it out. That's my thing, is I'll figure it out later. And but you know, Gabby reaches out to Charles. Charles talks to me and goes, so, and I call him Hey Buddy talks. He'd always call me and say Hey Buddy, and this is like how I knew we'd have a talk. We had a talk, and you know, he had mentioned like what he was dealing with, and he was dealing, you know, kind of the same thing, kind of battling the level of anxiety, the stress, and you know, seeing all this portray and still having to keep fighting. And it was hard, but it was crazy to, you know, you see Charlie, a big dude, like 200 something pounds, like strong, you know, you don't see him saying like, I'm having weak moments too, like I'm struggling too. And he's like, so we're going to do this together. And so he talked with me and he's like, we're going to do this together. We're going to check in on each other. You check on me, I'll check in on you. And that's what we did. And, you know, he helped me with, you know, obviously, again, I didn't talk to Casey for 3 days other than hello. It was really bad for me. Like I wasn't in the best state. But fourth day, he always like, maybe it's like, if you can't talk about this, write it. And so I did. I wrote it out and I said, you know, here's how I'm feeling. This is everything that's going on. This is how my brain is working right now. And I wrote this whole letter. And it was funny because he was like, I promise you, if you just write the letter, she'll understand. I was like, there's no way she'll understand in this, but I wrote it anyway. And for first thing she said, she goes, I love you and I understand. I'm here if you need me. And that is how, one, I knew I had the most badass wife on the face of the planet. And so beyond grateful for that, but it changed everything. And so I just had to kind of get up and I just had to kind of keep moving. But I had to remember the people that I loved, and I had to realize I wasn't alone, and I had the people around me to do that. You know, I had Charles, I had Blake, I had Gabby, and I had my wife, and I had my great circle of friends to really get me out of a very difficult time for me. And it was their love, their support, and not necessarily insider advice or anything that really got me through that, but just their love and support and the I'm here for yous that dramatically changed. The understanding, even if they couldn't fully understand, the understanding that I was going through a difficult time and to help where they could. That's what got me through that. And could I have stopped? And maybe. And I was pretty close to that point. You know, I will say this is probably the closest I've gotten to like a full mental breakdown in a very, very long time. And again, this is why I say I don't necessarily know the difference, because everyone could say at that point in time, I should have up and did it and just be gone. And I just didn't. Not that I shouldn't, not that I just didn't. But again, at the end, somehow, some way, I was able to come out so much stronger and so much more. But do I say that you should if you were in my shoes? I don't know. And I think that's different for this is exactly where I say I think that's different for everyone. Did it work for me? Yes, it did. Nothing was harder for me than 21 and 22. Period. End of discussion. But I did it anyway, and I survived. And now I can help others through that. But do I think everyone needs to go through that? Absolutely not. Do I think people should go through that? Absolutely not. I think people really need to understand where their limits are and to identify really when enough is enough. And I'm going to use really the stupidest example I can think of, but honestly, it was the only time that I truly said enough is enough. And that was my original degree. So I go from the hardest point of my life, period, having this huge revelation and great gratitude towards the people I work with, towards my wife, towards my friends, to like beginning of my college education. So I originally went to college to be an engineer, and I was going to be mechanical engineering, which I don't even know why. That's a first red flag there. If you don't even know why you're doing something, you need to take a step back and figure it out, because mechanical engineer made no sense to me. Like, to me, I still don't really understand what it is. What I could grasp is I'm building stuff that like works, which reminds me of Legos, which I hate. I hate Legos. Legos are the worst thing on the face of the planet. They never made sense to me. The best thing that I could build as a Lego was a wall. So I don't know, man. Like, I knew engineers made money. Mechanical engineers probably made the least amount of money, or come up with a genius design to make millions of dollars. But it was like not a well out plan. But I was like, I like math and I like money, and so I'm going to try these things. So that's what I did. And it was, I think, my sophomore year, end of my sophomore year, I made the lovely decision to take Calculus 3, differential equations, physics with the lab, a chemistry with the lab. And I think that was it. I think it was just 4. So Calc 3, DFQ, physics, college physics with the lab, and chemistry with the lab. And I was doing okay. I took Calc 3 and I was like, you know what? I'm taking physics and I'm taking DFQ. Chemistry was fine. Chemistry wasn't really a big deal, but the other classes were pretty sustainable. A lot of homework. And I was like, I will pass on Calc 3. I got a buddy of mine taking it. He'll learn. He can kind of give me notes, and then he can teach me, tutor me, whatever. So that allowed me to focus on differential equations and physics. And I took the first physics class. We did the lab. None of the stuff that the professor wrote. It was weird. I actually had my lab first and then my class. I don't know if it was like the first day or whatever, but I remember doing the lab first. I was like, this doesn't really make a lot of sense. But then I do the class, which kind of sucked because my lab professor and my physics, like the lecture professor, were 2 different people. And I think this is where I also went wrong. So try to find the lab and lecture professor be the same. But I took the class and I was like, okay, it kind of makes sense. Not a big deal. So I did that for like 2 weeks. And then by the 3rd week, we really break into the lab, and it's just more and more formulas that make no sense to me. I was like, you know what? Like, I'm not going to pass. So I dropped physics. So I'm out Calc 3. I'm out physics. DFQ is fine. No, I'm rolling through. My professor, terrible. He had a very thick accent. I had no idea what he was saying. And he would write directly in front of him. And he talked like really slow, but he wrote really fast. But the thing is, he wrote in front of himself, so you couldn't see those notes. So you couldn't see him until he shifted along the board. So then you're writing down all the things he's already written down really fast in terrible handwriting. He's talking really slow. And then you also have to pay attention to what he's currently writing on the board as he's talking. And so it's a lot of if you think, imagine if closed captioning was on like 3 different parts of the TV, and you're trying to watch all the closed captioning and the movie at the same time. It's pretty much what it felt like. So not just closed captioning at the bottom, closed captioning at the top, at the bottom, off to the side, and then you have the actual movie that you're watching on top of that. And you have to focus to all of that. That's pretty much what it felt like. But it was fine because I was used to really just kind of teaching myself and like doing things on the book. And so I go home, I do the homework, I look up on YouTube how to do all these problems, and everything was fine. Did great on the homework. I was actually teaching my buddy how to do it because he was still in DFQ with me. We get to the first exam, and I'll never forget getting the first exam. And my buddy and I are sitting right next to each other. And I get to the first question. I was like, oh, easy, done. And I did. I filled it all out. And then I get to the second one, and I got about halfway through, and I was like, brain fart, skip on, move on to the next one. At that point in time, my buddy gets up, turns in the paper, and walks out. And so now I'm like, Jesus, like he made this exam like super easy, but it's okay. I'm only on the second question. I get to the third question. Nothing. I got nothing. All right, whatever. Maybe it's a weird question. Get to the fourth question. Nothing. Get to the fifth question. Nothing. I go to the back. Look at that question. Nothing. And I think it's like 10 questions. I couldn't answer the rest of the exam. Not even start the rest of the exam. But I was crushing homework. Like I was getting hundreds on the homework. And I had no idea what I was looking at on this exam. And so I took my 1.5 problem exam and I turned it in. And then I went to student services to drop out of the class. And sure enough, my buddy is there. And I was like, what are you doing? He goes, I'm dropping out of DFQ. And I was like, cool, me too. And so we both dropped out pretty much at the same time. And that left me with a year of chemistry and no other classes, which was actually kind of nice. But yeah. But it was that year that I was like, you know what? I don't think engineering's for me. And it's because I didn't have a why factor behind it. It's because I was really just straining for something that didn't make sense to me. And there was no purpose, right? And I stopped enjoying what I was doing. I don't think necessarily my work really kind of died down or I still hung out with friends and things like that. But I really lost my passion, and I didn't even really lose my passion. I couldn't even find my passion to begin with. And I didn't see the purpose of it anymore. And I think, to me, that's one of the other key ways to identify this is too much for your mental health. Because imagine if I keep just going through that without purpose, without passion, without anything, and like where I would have become. Because then I truly think my relationships would have been affected. My job would have been affected. Everything would have been affected. And the difference between literally changing majors or deciding enough is enough to when I'd had a mental shutdown and blocked everybody out, which again, key sign that mental health is gone. The difference was I had a purpose. And my purpose was that to help everyone else be successful. I just needed someone to help me be successful back. And that was really what got me through, was the conversation with Charles saying, hey, I feel you. So I'll support you. You support me. And same thing, Blake, Gabby all reached out. Hey, I'll support you. You support me. We'll do this together. My wife being incredibly understanding, saying, I'll support you. You support me. And my friends, same thing. Hey, man, we're here to support you. And what I love about my friends is they never ask for any support back in that moment. They just supported me. And I will forever be grateful to everyone in my life during that time that made it through. And that was what gave me purpose. That is what re-sparked my passion. And that's what allowed me to overcome the summer of 2022. Even though I really probably very much did, without question, I surpassed my mental breaking point. So life is a fight. And you have to decide what battles you're going to fight till the very end, win or lose. But you can't avoid the fight. You can avoid a fight, but you can't avoid the fight. If you want to evolve, if you want to push, if you want to be successful in your own eyes and in your own vision, and that doesn't mean wealthy, that doesn't mean anything other than what you define as being successful is, if you want that, you will have to fight. But if you fight, if you push yourself, if you find a way to be comfortable in the uncomfortable, if you find a way to keep pushing on and on and on, even when life shoves everything to punch you and kick you down, if you find a way to push to the very end, you will come out stronger and better and faster and more successful than anyone else around you. So I encourage you to fight. I encourage you to push your limits, to be uncomfortable, but you're going to need to understand when enough is enough. And my last little bit of advice to you, if you're really struggling to figure out when is enough and when to keep pushing and when to go on or whatever, is sometimes what you really need is a break, not to stop the fight. And so sometimes, and what I recommend that you do throughout your day or throughout your time of this fight, is seek those breaks and do stuff that takes away that strain. For me, it's jiu-jitsu. Hashtag insert jiu-jitsu into the podcast. An hour and 30 minutes in. Didn't think I was going to remember, but I did. But reality wise, for me, it's jiu-jitsu. Because jiu-jitsu, when I am rolling, everything is blocked out. I don't hear anything. I am just focused on what's going on in front of me. I am trying to win. They're trying to beat me, but I am completely blank to the world around me. Nothing exists in that point in time other than that point in time. And so I am thought-free. I am carefree. I don't care if I win or lose. I'm just going through the moment of this 5 to 6 minute battle. And I get to do that over and over again. And that gives me enough of a decompression to relook at things in a different way, to stop thinking about something that's piling and getting bigger and bigger in my head as I seek that, to me simply just realizing and understanding that I just needed a break. And now I can see that in a different light. And now I can see things in a different perspective. And 9 times out of 10, it's not as bad as I built it up to be. It's that I allowed it to get built up to such a degree that it deteriorated really what I was going with in the first place. And that break and that mentality break allowed me to say, okay, actually, here's the solution, or actually, this isn't really that bad. I just need to approach it from this angle instead of what I have been approaching it at. And so when you allow yourself these mental breaks, it doesn't have to be jiu-jitsu, though highly recommended. It can be reading a book. It can be a hobby outside of jiu-jitsu, right? I got a buddy of mine does woodworking. I got his wife does book club, and she reads all the time. Got people that like to just start up and like make new things happen, whatever it may be. But you need to find some sort of, I guess you can call it distraction, but some sort of thing that you don't normally do that still challenges you, but allows you to not focus on the primary sources of your life and allows you to really focus just on you. And once you can intertangle that hobby or that passion or whatever in with your everyday work life, it'll allow you to fight the fights longer. Because ultimately your brain is a muscle. I mean, it's its own, but you can view your brain as a muscle. If you work it out, you need to give it breaks in between, right? I can't just do a curl forever and a day. My bicep's going to explode. But I can do 12 curls and I can set it down, shake it out, and I can do 12 more. And then I can set it down and shake it out. And then I can do 12 more and I set it down and shake it out. And there's 36 curls. But for me to do 36 curls in a row, I'm going to burn out way before 36. It's the same thing with your brain. If I keep just adding stuff to my brain and keep doing, I'm not expected to do 36 curls, right? I'm not expected to be able to handle that level of mental capacity. At some point, it's going to burn out, it's going to shut down. But if I can find ways to bring in breaks throughout my day, to do hobbies that allow me to really shut my brain off, well, then I can use my brain a lot more down the road. And this will allow me to decrease and control that level of intensity of me using my brain and bring it back and kind of get me almost into like a wave pattern, right? I have times where I really use my brain, and then I have times where I decrease, and then I, sleep, right? And I come up and I do my hobby, whatever it may be, right? But the idea is not to keep it going at a straight angle all the way up into the ceiling. Like, I need to give my brain a rest. I need to give it a break. And that can help you too. So utilize the hobby, utilize what gives you that mental break, whatever it is. Could be meditation, could be working out. Like I said, could be jujitsu. It can be whatever you want it to be. It just has to work for you. And note, it has to work for you. And so that's why I say it could be jujitsu, but it couldn't. Jujitsu works for me, may not work for everybody. So you have to figure out what works for you. But once you find what works for you, once you find that peace time that you can give to yourself on a almost like a daily basis, at least 4 times a week, 3 times a week, I promise you, you'll be able to fight those fights a lot longer. And I promise you, you'll be able to handle those situations. So even if you hit rock bottom, you'll be able to overcome them because you know when to rest, you know when to give 1,000%, and you know when to do everything else in between. You'll know what resources are at your disposal, you know, and you'll learn all these things. And this is a way to truly battle maybe the fights we don't necessarily want to fight, but really do need to fight. If we just don't give ourselves the excuse of, well, I'm done here. So if you lack, even if you lack passion in something, it's just like something like, I always like to talk about the first job, the first career. Most of the time, your first job, your first career, even going through college, like the first couple of years, that's not really passionate. You know, you're doing the basic courses, but it doesn't mean it can't help you towards your passion, right? And so even if you're not passionate about what you're doing at the very moment, the passion should be that this is going to get me to the next step. I'm going to the first couple of years of college, which everybody goes through: accounting, finance, English, whatever, history, yada, yada. I'm going to do that. So then I can go into, for me, it was marketing, right? What I was passionate about, which I courses that I actually did enjoy doing. Those types of deals let me go on, right? I did lifeguarding at one point because I had bills to pay. My passion resided within that company because it allowed me to want to help people. It inspired me to be a better leader, and then I wanted to keep trying to be a better leader. And I kept listening to all these leaders around me, learning how to lead. And then that allowed me to create my own, allowed me to do my own thing, right? And my passion became to help more and more people. And the easiest way that I can help people is to train them. So now I'm the director of training. And that wasn't seen 10 years ago, 11 years ago today. It wasn't seen at that point in time. But it did allow me to get to that point and allow me to see that point instinctively. But had I just kind of quit and been done, which, by the way, I almost failed, last little fun fact for the day, I almost failed the lifeguard course. Spinal backboard, it killed me. I almost didn't do it. And I could have dropped and been done right then and there. And I could have found something else. And imagine where I'd be if I would have quit in that very moment. Where would it be now? Because I guarantee you this podcast wouldn't exist. The amazing instructors that I have seen already this year just absolutely crush it and done already massive impacts on these people to build a community of people that love and support each other within this company has been the most rewarding thing. And I'm so grateful to have been able to play a part in that and allow that culture to thrive. Am I 100% the reason for it? Absolutely not. I take very little credit. I take the credit in regards that I was able to find and inspire the right people for the job to do what I never could. And these instructors right now, I'm telling you guys right now, this is the best, not even a humble brag, but these instructors that are teaching at Barefoot are some of the best instructors that I've ever seen. And I really want you to experience that for yourself because these LGIs are phenomenal. And every class I go to, every single instructor I watch, all have this passion to want to be your absolute best. And it is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. So if you haven't seen the videos on at Barefoot Lifeguards, I've been sharing some of their content as well. But really check this out for yourself because I'm telling you, it is probably the coolest thing. It's one of the most amazing things. These people are truly the embodiment of what I could ask. But that's them, not me. That's them. But I couldn't be there to help with that. I couldn't even be there to see it if I had given up on spinal backboarding 10 years ago. So that's what I give to y'all, and that's what I leave on. And that's my end as I push into follower appreciation. We have a couple. I don't think we got any big ones. I've kind of been slacking on trying to recruit these people. I think we only got 2, which is Nicole Arnold. Finally, child, you have followed the most amazing podcast of your life. Nicole Arnold is like my unofficial sister. So it's about time that she followed me. And then Do You Even Quack? So that's the other person that's followed. But so appreciate the follows, you guys. I really appreciate everything that y'all are doing. Not getting our 20s that we usually do, but that's okay. It all starts one thing at a time. And I think we got a YouTube subscriber, so I might as well give them a shout out. Although I believe it's like in Russian, or some other language. So I may not even be able to read your name. And of course, it's going to make me look it up. But the person I followed, subscribed on YouTube. I'll either try to give you a shout out the next go around. But I really appreciate all the support. YouTube is really the big one that we like to do. But I'm glad you guys enjoy the podcast on Spotify. I don't really care where you listen to this. I really don't. I'm just happy that you do. And I always enjoy that. So when we do that intro, that is truly the thing for me, is that you guys just enjoy the content and it helps you guys be successful. So, in Barefoot World, summer starting, Memorial Day soon, and the pools are going to be open. If you want to work for the best company in the world, you want to see what these amazing instructors have to play, what they're doing, by all means, please come work for us. It's a great company. It's a great gig. We care about you. I care about you personally. We care about you as a whole. It's good and be a better place to work. And I truly do mean that. We got our Barefoot Bash. Our Barefoot Bash taking over the world. It is June 4th. June 4th at the Little Elm Sand Beach Volleyball Courts. Anybody and everybody is welcome and ready to join. And we're going to be there, play a lot of sand volleyball. Hopefully people don't tackle me and try to wrestle me, but it's probably going to happen. I lost it. Sorry, I've been trying to find this whole subscriber and this entire time I couldn't even find them. But anyways, Barefoot Bash, Barefoot Bash, June 4th. 8 p.m. is when we're going to be there. We're going to start getting there. Sand volleyball, swim at the lake, whatever. It's going to be all sorts of things. But June 4th, 8 p.m. That begins our festivities. Be there, be square. It's going to be a great time. Always is. Goal is a bunch of people. I think 125 is what I said last time. So 125 people. Let's go. Let's do it. And let's make this the best year ever. Really appreciate you guys. I still need a name, guys. I still need a name for just me doing this podcast. So we got Pep Talks with Parker, and we got Parker and Peeps. So if you can think of any other name, what to call when I'm just doing a podcast without Tanner, feel free to like, subscribe, and comment below what you want the names to be with just me. So I appreciate all of you guys. Hearts in the chat. Boom. And we're out of here.